Hi, welcome back to the next video snippet from Follet. Today we're going to read the first part of chapter 17. And once again, knowing what you like. It's not safe for work nor children. Nope. Don't share it unless the person you share it with is an adult, and then share away because, I know why. Anyway, so if you're all comfy and all the children have left the room, and there are no co-workers around to rat you out, we can begin. Here we go. Follet and Meri left Clarksdale not so early the next morning. They had stayed up late talking. Follet awakened first and spent a glorious half hour watching Meri sleep, occasionally reaching over to her to move a stray wisp of her hair out of her face. When he could stand it no more, Follet leaned over and touched his lips to hers. She smiled in her sleep and reached for him. Follet moved his head back to watch again, and Meri's still sleeping lips kissed a Follet that lived in her dreams, while her real-life Follet watched her and waited for her dream to end. When her lips found none that answered her, Meri's eyelids moved and fluttered open. As she saw Follet, she grinned. "I've been dreaming of you, Follet." Follet grinned back. "I know, Meri. I've been watching you dream. From the outside this time." "I like to have you," Meri giggled, "in my dreams, but I think I like to have you even more when I'm awake." She rolled into Follet's embrace. Follet was in no hurry to leave Meri's kisses, but he left her lips and continued by kissing her chin, and then the column of her neck, and then lower to her collarbones and the top of her chest. By the time he had reached her belly, Meri had wriggled around to kiss his stomach and run her eager fingers toward his penis. Follet moved lower, pushing his nose through Meri's luxurious curly hair, smelling the aroma of her skin, and faintly at first, and stronger as he moved between her opening thighs, then her musk. He opened his mouth and stuck his tongue out to tease the little hood that enclosed her clit. He licked his lips and put his tongue back in his mouth to coat it with the slick saliva that he wanted to spread on her. While Follet was busy bidding Meri good morning, Meri was engaged in fervently rousing Follet to action. She spread her fingers out on pushing down each of Follet's thighs, and then curled her fingers and scraped them back up to his scrotum. Meri took Follet's shaft in her right hand and moved her mouth to Follet's tender sack, opening her soft lips and sucking him into her wet mouth, one testicle at a time. When she had pulled one of his plump orbs into her mouth, she explored its contours with her tongue, sucking all the while. After she had made it known to her, she released it with a wet pop, dripping with her spit, and took his other ball into her mouth. She squeezed his shaft as she suckled his scrotum, her hand not moving but clasping and clenching him loosely, and then tighter and still tighter until she gradually loosened her grip on him. His penis grew warmer in her hand, and she could feel his heart beating through his manhood as she held him. Follet's mind was racing with the sweet sensation of Meri's adept mouth suckling his balls, but he had other prizes to pursue. He laved her labia, slowly and thoroughly tonguing each fleshy fold and then softly sucking those lips between his, gently into his warm mouth. He loved the taste of her, the deep, musky, piquant sensation of her that he relished. As he moved his lips and tongue deliberately back further between her legs, inexorably, nearer and nearer to her yoni. Just as the Kamakatela temple in Assam, Meri's cleft was moist. As her devotee and a pilgrim to her sacred place, Follet touched her and drank from her. Follet's worship of Meri's beautiful cunt would not be complete until he had covered the mouth of her vagina with kisses, both clockwise and counterclockwise. Follet wore the tilak of his devotion to Meri emblazoned on his heart. Follet's kisses spurred Meri on toward her objective. She continued to fondle Follet with one hand while she took him into her mouth, guided by her other. As she filled her mouth with him, taking him deeper and deeper into her, her tongue slid over his hardness, and her lips squeezed softly and moved along his shaft. She took as much of him as she could and pulled him out of her. She moved her tongue and lips to create more saliva, and when her mouth was full of the warm, slick spit, she again opened her mouth to envelop him and to consume him, to inhale his cock as if it were the air that gave her life. Meri first felt the subtle pulsations whose resonance foretold a throbbing, thrilling, tingling to come. She closed her eyes to revel in the pleasure even as she began to move her hand along Follet's shaft, stroking him to bring him to the same release that she felt was near. Follet closed his eyes as well, continuing his kisses and gently touching the places that he had worshipped with his tongue. As his touch and his lips fluttered over her with a caress as gentle as sunbeams falling on the delicate layered petals of a pink ranunculus. Follett moaned softly as Mary's mouth urged him closer to the end. He felt himself begin to explode, his hot sperm filling her just as she began to spasm. He pressed his lips hard against the soft fold of Mary's pussy as she bucked against him in her orgasm. As they were spent, Meri and Follet wheeled around to face each other, a glowing happiness lighting their faces. As their lips met in a new kiss, they tasted themselves and each other, and they smiled. Eventually, they left each other's arms and got ready to travel. They walked out of the Riverside Hotel and jumped into the caddy, drove slowly down Sunflower Avenue and turned right onto State Street. After about 5 minutes, Follet pulled onto Highway 278 southwest of town and punched the accelerator. After a few miles, they passed the little town of Alligator to their right, and the road began to be called by its old name, Highway 61. They drove through Hushpokina, then Marigold, and then Cleveland. Meri turned on the radio, and WINC, always prescient, played Johnny Rinner's version of Highway 61 revisited as they neared Leland. They turned off the highway in Leland and headed west toward the Mississippi to Greenville, where they turned southwest and crossed the river on Highway 278. When they had crossed into southeastern Arkansas and skirted Lake Chico, one of the hundreds of oxbow lakes created by the meandering of the Mississippi, WINC stopped the music for a public service announcement. Brothers and sisters, if you're heading toward Louisiana, please be careful and aware that after their defeat in Rome, the exorcists are planning an assault on Phobator and his children. We're not certain when the onslaught will commence, but we anticipate serious fighting in a day or two, with New Orleans as the epicenter of the battle. Stay tuned to WINC for further details and news. And then the disc jockey played Johnny Cash's version of Last Night I Had the Strangest Dream. Last night I had the strangest dream I ever dreamed before. I dreamed the whole world had all agreed to put an end to war. Follet, Meri shifted in her bucket seat, folded her legs under her, and turned to touch the nape of his neck with the tips of the fingers of her left hand. You and I are beings created to make love instead of war, but if we can do anything to aid Phobator, I want to be there. I can't stand aside. Follet stole a quick glance at Meri. I'll take you to New Orleans then, Meri, he said softly. We'll be there tomorrow, and the gods help us all. She leaned over to him and kissed him on his cheek. Follet turned south on Highway 65 and drove through Eudora and then into Louisiana. Never far from the river, through Lake Providence and Transylvania and Tallulah and Newellton, Follet saw water on either side of the road. Some of the waters were ponds that had once been lakes that had once been the river. Some of the waters were oxbow lakes that had once been the river, and some of the water was still in the river. At Clayton, he turned left, and the road became a schizophrenic 425/15 as he approached Faraday. When they finally pulled into Faraday, where Haney's Big House Lounge once gave a stage to every Southern blues musician worthy of the name, Follet started looking for a place to get some pie. They'd travel to somewhere around Baton Rouge today and then find Phobator in New Orleans tomorrow. But now Follet wanted some pie. He drove down the empty streets, seeing no houses with a second floor and precious few commercial buildings that could sport a staircase. As they continued through the little town, Follet noticed that more than half of the town's residences were mobile homes, not all even double-wides. After he had driven in circles for a while and found his way back to the main drag, E. Wallace Boulevard, Follett's stomach was growling and he passed a Sonic Drive-In, Big Bob's Barbecue, and a museum before he found what he was looking for, Brocado's Restaurant on the corner of Jerry Lee Lewis Drive. There were a couple of older American cars parked out front, and a black and orange plastic open sign was stuck crookedly in the corner of the window. So Follet and Meri decided to give the place a try.